So at Zenoti, we believe fundamentally what I said earlier, which is when people feel good, they go on to find their greatness. They do well in their everyday life. So, so we are very passionate about this space, and when we say we are passionate about this space, we want people in this industry to do. They do a great service to all the consumers and guests. So we want them to really excel at what they do.
Alrighty, hello everyone, and welcome to the Deal Maker Show. So, super exciting guest today that we have. I mean, we're going to be learning the transition from corporate to building your startup to going from technical to business, and now obviously to really a tremendous journey that he has embarked on that we're going to be learning about today. So, I guess without further ado, let's welcome our guest today, Sudheer Koneru. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So originally born there in India, actually in quite a small town. So how was life growing up there?
Yes, it was nice. It was more about family and close connections and bonds, and being in a small town, a village kind of atmosphere. It was, appreciating relationships and being very well bonded to my family was something which I grew up with.
And how small was the town?
It was like maybe 400 people kind of stuff. That's all.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everyone knew everyone.
Yes, I knew everyone. So if you go out into the town, then you have to stop at everybody's house and you have to say hello and to go to the next house. So it was not easy to get away from being polite
Wow.
and
I mean, if you ever probably go back there, they must be asking you for photographs and autographs and all types of stuff, no?
yes,
It must be
yes,
like the rock star. But in this
yeah.
case, for you, it was a pivotal moment. Your father decided to go to the city, and that definitely really, got you guys to get emotion, so to speak. So tell us about how that was, perhaps like a shocker or quite a difference for you and what you were used to.
Yeah, it was very different because my dad was the first person in our whole family to leave the village and go to the town, go to a city, and work there. So growing up for me, I came from very simple roots, whereas in city there were families and people who were very flamboyant, very different in how they used to be. So I had to just fit in and kind of learn to say, okay, I'm also here. So it was, yeah, it was an interesting gradual experience, but some of those shape you. They stay with you, that you always tend to think simple, whereas everybody around you is maybe smarter, but they talk a lot kind of stuff, and you just learn to live with that. I think you it shapes you.
And for you, your father obviously played a really important role for you. I mean, he ended up coming to the U.S. You finished your school there in India, but I'm sure that kind of like put the U.S. in your map, in your radar. I mean, obviously, as a result of this, you even ended up coming to the U.S. to do your master's. But I guess my question here is, why engineering? Why is every single person that I meet from India, they have an engineering background? I mean, are you guys born with an engineering degree under your arm or what?
I think no. I think it's about the times. In those times, I think the opportunities in India were more around engineering and medicine, where you could get a good career. Whereas if you went down journalism or other artwork, you may not make material money. But today that has changed even in India. But in those days, that was the case. So if you were really good at your education, it was natural that you get into the best engineering school. And even in terms of, I chose computer science, it's not like I chose computer science because I knew I want to be in computer science. It is like it is the most aspired discipline in those days because it was the most emerging category, and it was hardest to get into. So if you get a good rank, good grade, then you could get a shot at it. So I picked it because I got a shot at it.
And talking about taking a shot at it, I mean, you graduate from your master's, and here you are. You start in a village, with 400 people, and now all of a sudden you find yourself in one of the biggest tech companies on the planet. I mean, how much of a shocker was that, and how did you land on Microsoft?
Yeah, I think so. Microsoft was a very accidental thing. When I was in college, all my friends were going off and saying, "Oh, we're going to do internships and all that stuff." When they were in grad school in Texas, Austin, and I thought, "Oh, okay, I'm going to sit around doing nothing for summer. Maybe I'll also apply." So I was late applicant, but I got into Microsoft, and I loved the atmosphere. It was really very friendly and very family-like, and I joined Microsoft as an intern, and I loved the place so much that I went back as a full-time employee. Though my job offer from Microsoft was like, they were paying me in those days like, something like $35,000 a year, whereas IBM, I had a job for $55,000 a year. I still chose to go to Microsoft, and it didn't make any logical sense. It was just this is what I mean about choices that we make. I somehow made that choice. It was my gut reaction. It wasn't thought through. I wasn't as passionate about money, but I loved the place. So, and of course, it worked out beautifully because I remember I was negotiating with my recruiter. Can you reduce my options and give me some more money and my stock options? And she was like, "No, we're not going to do that." And I am so happy that she didn't do it because it would have made difference of millions of dollars that day.
Well, 100%. I mean, we're talking about the early 90s where the company was like literally like blowing up in a really, really nice way. I guess for
Yes.
you, like, how was the experience of being able to work and being able to see and perhaps meet, people like Bill Gates, who at the time was very involved with Microsoft?
Yeah, I think Microsoft was a very defining time of my career in those days. It was people were very driven, energized to do well. And, the standard, the bar of excellence was so high that I kept learning like crazy every year. It was like I never was in the shoes of feeling like I know it all. The environment kept me in the shoes that, hey, I have so much to learn and so much to grow kind of stuff. And so I ended up with very good career growth at Microsoft and, did very well in terms of leading a very large or part of Windows team when I was leaving Microsoft.
And definitely your segue into launching your first baby, Intelliprep. So here you get together, you put the band, it was a group of former colleagues as well from Microsoft, and here you go, started your first thing. So how was that experience with Intelliprep, and what were you guys doing there?
Yeah, so we built what is online learning solutions, so learning management systems, and we evolved what we did. We started off with some high principles because we came from Microsoft. We were guys who knew how to build great products, and we thought like Microsoft because Microsoft can choose to think and solve any big problem because they're Microsoft. Whereas when you're out in the world on your own, we had to quickly learn and realize, hey, we can't do aspire to solve complex. We have to be very specific about solving specific problems and get customers very quickly and learn how to get customers. So it was a big wake up call and a learning exercise that though we were great technologists and product designers, we didn't know what it meant to do business. And we learned very fast, but it was, I think it was the best decision, though. It was a tough decision to leave Microsoft at the time.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, but definitely quite a ride. What ended up being the business model of Intelliprep? I mean, what were you guys doing there?
So we were building talent management solutions, learning management solutions for large businesses. So we had the top 60% of the S&P 500 as customers of us in the category. The product we built became the leader in Gartner Magic Quadrant, etc. So it was a leading solution, and eventually the company was called SumTotal Systems through some name change and M&A.
Yeah, because the company was merged into Click2learn, which was a Paul Allen company. Funny enough, how you keep getting the Microsoft vibes, in your career, and then, like you were saying, that translated into becoming SumTotal. So, I mean, the company ultimately ended up being a $100 million business by the time that you decided it was time for you to leave. But I think that for you and for the team, probably it was quite an interesting journey because you were able to learn as well. It's like what they say, you don't know what you don't know, right? And I guess at this point, what you really knew that you didn't know was the business side, of really building a company. So
Yeah.
what happened there? I mean, how did you really realize that, and how tough was that, figuring that you guys were too techy for the business requirements that the business had?
Yeah, so first thing was just that we were thinking if we build a product, if you build it, they will come kind of attitude, right? Whereas that's Microsoft's attitude. We have to first figure out what is the pain point, who's the buyer in the organization specifically, and navigate the decision, and then build exactly what the market wants, not what I think is ideal. Big problems can be solved by Googles and Microsofts because they have resources and they can come at it with a huge idealistic philosophy. As a startup, you can't have idealistic philosophy. You have to have oxygen to breathe, and which is money. That's one kind of learning, and the other is in terms of creating wealth for the people who are with you. I mean, I think I would have done things differently, but though we did have some good investors at that time, early stage. In fact, by the way, even Satya Nadella was a good friend at the time, and he was also an investor and an advisor for my company at the time. But we could have done better in terms of making sure our me and the employees had more capitalization of those things. And this time around, I learned quite well. So I made sure at Zenoti our employees are well set up. So
And now that you mentioned Satya, I mean, what an incredible leader. I mean, what he has done with Microsoft is remarkable. So what do you
yes,
think, like makes Satya Nadella such a great leader since you've, had the opportunity of having that good relationship with him?
yeah, I think it is about the whole notion of looking at the work. I mean, first, of course, it's the business decision, being aligned with what's happening in the industry in terms of cloud services, where the world is going, and aligning Microsoft with that direction. It was very important. And the second, from a culture perspective, what does it mean to build a high performance culture at that scale? I think Satya did a pretty good job of navigating the organization into returning back to its roots of high performance culture. So both, aligning with what's happening with market trends, and that's just left Microsoft is on a amazing spree right now, and I think it has a great future ahead of it.
And in your case, after the whole transactions happening, the change of names, from Intelliprep to Click2learn, from Click2learn to SumTotal, you became tired, and you really understood that you were more of an entrepreneur versus like an employee, doing the 9 to 5. And here you go, you decide to leave, and you do a little bit of soul searching, and you take 2 years off. I mean,
Yes.
2 years off gives for a lot of time off and for a lot of thinking. So there. So what went through your mind during those 2 years? What happened?
Well, I learned a lot. One of the big things is, see, I was busy working all my career. And I think that's what happens to most people. They're very busy working, that they forget where they are in life in terms of awareness of the choices we are making. Why are we making these choices? It seems very logical. When you get to a certain point, you get married, you have kids, you do a job, then you buy a house, then you do this. But I think I just had a wake up call in those window through some of the workshops, meditation, yoga, and other things, that I suddenly became more present to things about myself. And we all die at the end of the day, and so how do we use our time and what choices do we make and stuff. So
So I guess along the way, what have you learned? And we're going to talk about it, about Cenote in just a little bit, but in terms of life, right? Because I think that 2 years, gives you a lot of time to reflect, right? And
yeah.
to really take a look at what you've done, in the past, and then where you're at in the present, and how you can project, those reflections and realizations into a more of a brighter future. So what did you learn about choices?
So one thing is, I really learned that, firstly, that wellness, I spent a lot of time trying to think, what is wellness, what is well-being. And I realized that, see, our innate nature of human consciousness is to work towards our full potential. If I'm feeling healthy, if I'm feeling good, I will naturally go and solve the most complex problems that I'm able to solve, whatever it is. If I'm a basketball player, I'll play basketball amazingly well. So it's all about, well-being is about getting to a state where you are operating to your full potential in all walks of life, as a father, as a husband, as a professionally, etc. So that awareness of saying what is your potential and working towards that potential is what I've kind of been more present to, I would say.
So then, in this case, obviously you came across what ended up becoming your involvement with Latitude Pro,
Yeah.
and definitely a different way of interpretation of well-being and wellness, and this got you excited. I mean, it was your kind of like your next rodeo to a certain degree. I mean, obviously not at the scale and level of Cenote, which we're going to be talking about now, but how was the journey with Latitude Pro?
Yeah, it was, it was all about being very passionate about helping people with well-being and wellness. So I used to get very excited about the whole thing, and it was not a job as such. It was more like, passion, spending time with people, writing articles, thinking about how to create workshops for learning and mindfulness and well-being and everything as part of this ecosystem. So it was a great journey in learning that way. But then I realized, there was huge problems with running the business because of lack of good software systems when I had multiple stores in different cities and everything. And that's how I realized, hey, there is a problem here in software. I wasn't planning to do a startup, by the way. yet again in software. I was happy doing what I was doing, and my life was just fine. But once the problem became too apparent, I had no choice. I felt like I should do this, and that's what led me to start Zenoti kind of stuff.
So then, obviously, let's talk about Cenote. But before just getting into that, you ended up doing an exit of Latitude Pro. I mean, the company got acquired by Apollo Health, and I think that
Yes.
maybe this gave you an overview that you didn't have before, because you had the overview of perhaps like doing a business, merging it, and then obviously you say goodbye and you do your own thing. But in this case, you actually saw Latitude Pro going all the way to the finish line, because it got acquired. I mean, it was literally the full cycle as an entrepreneur. How was that experience for you, where now from a 30,000 foot view, you see everything and you understand what it takes from going from point A to point C?
Yeah, it gave me the confidence that, look, starting a new business, the first time around when I started a business, I will definitely acknowledge I had a lot of fear. Like, coming out of Microsoft is like you made this tough choice and you're scrambling to get your business back on, like your every energy is going into it. But now with the awareness that, hey, if you focus, if you execute, if you make the right choices, things come together. Didn't have any fear around doing another startup. It was like more like I can approach this in a more methodical way. I don't need to get afraid if things don't go well for a quarter or two, etc.
So then, Cenote. So tell us about Cenote, how you come across the idea of Cenote, because as they say, ideas, they're dormant for a while, then they incubate, and then, it's time to really bring them to life. So how was that process for you?
Yeah, so the Zenoti idea came about because I was really spent a lot of time trying different software to run my whole business. I tried one, didn't work out, then I did more research, tried another. So really, after trying all this, I realized really this is what all the people must be doing. I am like just I have only 7 stores. What about somebody who has 40 stores? How are they running their business? And then I realized everybody is struggling to run their business. They have no good software. They're just managing without it. So I think I just ran into a problem by being in the system, and I understood the industry very well because because I was so passionate about well-being. I would actually have worked at the reception, met with every guest, worked with the personal trainers. I know how personal training happens. I know how spas run, salons run. So I was so hands-on. I It was very fun. It's weird that somebody with my kind of tech background had was so hands-on and learned so much about this kind of a business that it was easy for me to make the transition, saying I know exactly what this industry needs in terms of software.
So then, tell us about the business model of Cenote, so that the people that are listening get it. I mean, what has ended up becoming the business model of Cenote?
So Zenoti provides end to end. It's like a CRM plus ERP integrated for the spa, salon, medi spa, wellness like yoga studios, etc. Businesses. So we run everything for key brands. If you take like a brand like Core Power Yoga or a brand like European Wax, which has 800 stores in the US, everything from their front desk to how their consumers make bookings with them to their back office operations, inventory, marketing, the employee payroll, everything is managed by Zenoti. So it's a comprehensive end-to-end solution for these businesses in wellness space.
And now, obviously, you are entering a business where you have fully transitioned from the technical side to the business side and to combining both. So, how is it now to be on a different seat with a different lens, with a different perspective, where you're able to really own both aspects of the equation?
Yeah, so I feel throughout the journey of Zenoti, what I would say is I've been able to be really aware and present to the fact that building a business is all about choices we make. Earlier I might have made those choices in haphazard ways. Now it was deliberate, conscious awareness saying, you know what, life is all about the choices we make. There are many, at every point in time, we have different paths to go. The good example I would give is like this Harry Potter movie where Harry Potter could have ended up in Slytherin house or Gryffindor house. And, but somehow he ends up in Gryffindor because he asks, saying, I want to be in Gryffindor. Otherwise, he would have ended up being in Slytherin. And so then Dumbledore tells him, it's our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are far more than our abilities. So I also believe in that. The how you do maybe depend on our abilities, how good we are. But the what we do and how we achieve is all depends on the choices we make and the values we have kind of stuff. So at Zenoti also, I think I went through tons of key choices which were critical along the way for us to get to where we are today.
So how big is the company today? I mean, how many employees do you guys have?
We have about 650 employees, and we are the leading solution today in the spa salon, the high end of the market, where all these big brands. I would say there's nobody who's even one tenth the size of Zenoti in the area of the big brands.
Nice. And then in terms of capital raising, how much capital have you guys raised today?
To date, we have raised more than 200 million. I think 230 million or so. Yeah, our last round was about 150 million.
And you were talking about choices earlier. I mean, obviously, when you're raising, that kind of money, you need to choose wisely for the investors because, as they say, it's harder to divorce an investor than divorcing your husband or wife. So, why
Yeah.
did you make the choice that you made with the investors that you decided to onboard?
Yeah, good question. So, it's actually, we were lucky enough that we didn't need capital to start our business because I had, between Microsoft and my previous companies, I had enough money, and there were too many friends and family who wanted to invest in my business. So I never raised any capital outside of myself and some close friends and family. But Axel Partners found us and they reached out to us. I wasn't looking for money or anything. They researched us. And the reason I chose Axel first, of course, is the connection with the person who came to talk to me. He was so passionate. He understood the SaaS space very well. He had the broad perspective and exposure in how to grow a SaaS business. And he made me aware of the one big choice I had to make. He said, "Look, Sudhi, you can keep doing what you're doing today, which is we were selling to the Southeast Asia, Middle East, and Australia, all markets around India kind of stuff. Or really, you want to build a big business? Do you realize you have to go to America if you want to build a big business? You're not going to build it from here." And I thought he had a very insightful point, and it was a big inflection point for Zenoti, where I literally moved my whole family, my company, everything to Seattle, and because I did grow up here, a lot of time here, and I really thought he had very made me aware of a choice that I had to make, and I did make that choice. So
So then, obviously, again, going to choices. I mean, one of the things that it was another breakthrough moment for you guys was adding the payment processing. How do you typically, like, when you come across like initiatives of this nature? I mean, what is the process of listening, analyzing, and then being able to make the choice that is going to have the impact?
yeah, that's a good point. See, this is one thing which you mentioned about listening. When I first started my first company, I forgot to tell you, my board member, one of my key investors and board member, was used to beat the crap out of me that I was not a good listener. That's Sudhir, you're not listening. You're not listening. I'm like, what do you mean you're not listening? I'm like really smart. Like, no, I've learned that listening to is a very specific thing. And that is the biggest tip that somebody gave me in my life about listening.
Yeah.
So I think I was very much listening to my customers, to the traffic of where am I making money, where is the money that my customers are also spending that I'm not getting, etc. And that's what led us to realize, hey, we should do payment processing, because if we do payment processing, we get to make almost 40% more money from every customer, and there's no reason why they won't go with us in all the when I listen to the customers. And so we chose along the way to do payment processing as a big investment for the company, and it was one of the most important choices because today 40% of our revenue comes from payment processing. I'm glad we took it on early when we took on the US market, etc. And if I had not, and of course, even after I made that choice, by the way, we did end up with trouble. Payment processing is a new beast for us. So when we launched with a partner, we had some problem with the partner's software and things were not going well. Some of our large customers were extremely upset with me. And I had to literally fly down, listen to the CEO of this Waxing the City brand, who's a very good friend of mine today. But at that day, he was like so upset, and he was like, "Sudhir, you're totally ripping apart my business. You're embarrassing me." And I think the first thing I could do was just empathize with him, listen to him, and tell him, "Look, I totally know I'm letting you down, but I think this is a fixable problem. This is separate from the core software you're using." And he gave me a chance to address it because I listened. I mean, if I had not listened to him and I had not responded, it would have thrown me out of the room, kind of stuff. So that worked out. And after we fixed all those problems, I mean, not only was that my most biggest fan as today of our company is, the CEO of Access City, and he would always tell everyone that he loves us because of how well we averted that crisis and disaster. And payment processing has in turn turned out to be, a huge revenue generator for us, and we would have been 40% smaller as a company if I had not made that choice.
And talking about, as well, the customer, for Cenote, I mean, the first couple of years, I mean, were very difficult because you were for 2 years developing. I mean, that's like 2 years in the desert before you're able to really start, putting everything into market and really seeing the reaction. So how was that experience, and how did you, end up perhaps adding some really critical data points on really understanding what the customer needed versus, what you thought it was cool or what you thought it would make sense? I mean, how was the development process on those 2 years for you all?
Yeah, so I think even we had been so immersed in the business itself, we had a fairly good understanding of what the customers may need because we had been hands on. So that helped us a lot. But it was a long window of time where we were spending time building the whole product because we were coming to market with more like an enterprise scale product. But working with some key brands really helped us. Like, choosing to go talk to the largest of brands. Again, it's about the choice. Like we said, no, we are going to focus on the high end of the industry. We're not going to go to the small guy. The small guy is easy to sell to. You can get lots of sales very quickly, but the big guy is not going to agree so easily. But we still chose the hard path of focusing on the big guy. So listening to the big guy, partnering with them, and because they did have a problem, so they were willing to listen and share their feedback and inputs, so we could evolve our software to reach a point where large brands were ready to deploy it. So I think really the choice of saying no, let's go solve the hard problem which this industry has and partner with some the right kind of customers. So we chose businesses which were like founder led businesses because again, you can always say the market is what it is, but even within that, slicing it and choosing the right customer helps you because they become good partners with you, kind of stuff.
So, for example, like now, obviously, we've been talking about the past. I want to take a look at the future for Zenoti. Imagine that you go to sleep tonight and you wake up 5 years later. I mean, tremendous news, right? And you wake up in a world where the vision of Zenoti is fully realized. What does that world look like?
So at Zenoti, we believe fundamentally what I said earlier, which is when people feel good, they go on to find their greatness. They do well in their everyday life. We think this is an industry around well-being which touches people's lives in person. Like when you go, no other place do you allow someone to come touch your hair, touch your skin, touch your, whatever the yoga, the workshops, and all that. So, so we are very passionate about this space, and when we say we are passionate about this space, we want people in this industry to do they do a great service to all the consumers and guests. So we want them to really excel at what they do while Zenoti takes care of the rest. So if you ask me 5 years fast forward, I would say everybody is only focused on doing what they do best: cut beautiful hair, do skincare, and leave everything else about their day-to-day work to Zenoti. It's like being the Uber. Uber says you drive, you just drive. I'll tell you when to pick up, I'll tell you when to drop. You go home when you're done, your money will be in the bank. You don't have to worry at all about anything other than driving, man. I will give you the rides. Same way, Zenoti should be saying, hey, you cut hair, I'll bring you the customer. You do the customer, you go home at the end. Trust me, your money is in tips. If you need to make more tips, I'll figure out how to make more tips, how to bring those customers back. Leave everything else to Zenoti, but you keep doing a wonderful job of helping people to feel good when they walk out of your store.
Very cool. So now imagine I put you into a time machine and I bring you back in time and you're able to have a chat with your younger self, with that younger Sudhir, and you're able to give that younger Sudhir one piece of advice before launching a company. Imagine, it's right before you give your notice, at Microsoft, right before you actually started Intelliprep, your first baby, and you're able to be right there in front of you. And to give one piece of business advice before launching a company, what would that be and why, Sudhir?
I would say, to learn to listen. It is. listen very well, and many people don't understand what listening really means. Listening is about all the data points that are coming at you, and asking and being open to listening and asking questions in response to listening to people. I think listening is a key skill, not just in terms of doing well, even in terms of building relationships and building when people feel you listen to them, you hear them out, they trust you, they want to work with you, whether it's customers, employees, and you make the right business decisions when you listen well. And I think, you know, if any entrepreneur who listens very well to all the data coming at them would do very well. So that's what I would advise myself. Hey, just please make sure you understand what it means to listen. And maybe I would do a small exercise or workshop to make the little me to understand what listening means.
100%, and I'm right there with you. And I think that, for example, in fundraising, listening is everything because these are people that have formed an investment thesis around your business, and it's
Yes.
ultimately concerns what separates them with really deploying capital. So it's really about not listening for giving the best answer or listening for looking good. Is listening for removing the concerns that are in between you and the money. So
Yes.
I'm right there with you.
Exactly.
So there, I guess for the people that are listening, what is the best way for them to reach out and say hi?
Well, they can email me. My email is skoneru@zenoti.com. And, I am pretty prompt with most of my email all the time. Yes.
Amazing. Well, Sudhir, thank you so much for being on the Deal Maker Show today.
Yes. Thank you. Glad to be here.